touch the table in front of you. Go on, do it right now. You feel the hardness, right? The cold, solid, real contact. Now let me ruin that sensation for you forever. Never, not a single time in your entire life, have you actually touched that table. Not it, not anything. Your fingers have never truly made contact with the surface. In fact, you have never touched absolutely anything. I know what you're thinking. I'm crazy. I clearly feel the contact. My fingers are pressing against the table right now. But wait, let's go a little deeper. Because what you're feeling is not contact, it's rejection. Pure electromagnetic repulsion. The electrons in your fingers and the electrons in the table are screaming at each other at the quantum level, repelling one another with such violent force that it creates the perfect illusion of solidity. Think about it this way. Every atom in your body is basically empty space. The nucleus is tiny. The electrons are diffuse clouds at astronomically large distances on the atomic scale. If an atom were the size of a football stadium, the nucleus would be a marble at the center. Everything else would be total emptiness. So when your hand approaches the table, what's really happening is that two clouds of empty space are moving closer together. And just before the electrons touch, at that infinitesimal instant, the electromagnetic force kicks in with unimaginable violence. Here comes the truly disturbing part. That force, that electromagnetic repulsion, is not pushing solid particles. It is acting through empty space, without contact. The electrons never touch each other. Never. What we experience as solidity is pure quantum rejection operating at a distance. Ghostly, invisible action occurring between particles that never actually meet. Now, I want you to think about something. Every sensation you have ever experienced in your life, every hug, every caress, every oodah, every time you felt the wind on your face or sand beneath your feet, none of that was real contact. It was electromagnetism, invisible force acting between particles that never meet. Your entire reality, everything you know as physical and tangible, is a perfectly orchestrated electromagnetic illusion. But wait, because this gets even stranger, much stranger. When you flip a light switch and electrons begin to flow through the wire, quantum physics tells us something absolutely insane. Those electrons do not take a single path through the wire. They take all possible paths simultaneously. Every imaginable trajectory, every absurd route you can conceive of, all of them are happening at the same time. Let me repeat that more slowly so it sinks in. The electron does not choose between going this way or that way. It goes this way and that other way, and looping around, and spiraling, and zigzagging. All of those paths coexist, overlap, and interfere with one another like waves colliding in a pond. And when all those possibilities add together, when they interfere constructively and destructively, what remains is the single path you observe. This is not a metaphor. It's not poetic language. It is literally how nature works at the fundamental level. Richard Feynman demonstrated this with his diagrams, but the implication is far deeper than most people imagine. If an electron is exploring all possible paths, where are all those paths happening? Not here, not in this single universe. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics tells us something chilling. Every time a quantum particle faces multiple possibilities, the universe splits. Not metaphorically, literally. Right now, as you are watching this video, there are versions of you in parallel universes where the electrons in your screen took slightly different paths. Universes where every particle explored every quantum possibility available. And all of those universes are just as real as this one. They are not speculation. They are not science fiction. They are a direct mathematical consequence of the equations of quantum mechanics. When scientists solve the Schrödinger equation without cheating, without forcing an artificial collapse of the wave function, the result is clear. Universes multiply constantly. Now, I know this sounds too absurd to be true, but let me tell you something about quantum computing, because this is where it stops being philosophy and becomes engineering. A quantum computer can factor enormous numbers, numbers that would take all the conventional computers on Earth combined longer than the age of the universe to solve. How? Where is it performing all those calculations? Here's the devastating question. If you have a quantum computer factoring a 300-digit number, and that computer contains only a few atoms, where is the processing happening? There is not enough matter in the observable universe to store all the necessary intermediate operations. The calculations require more bits of information than there are atoms available. So where is it happening? The only coherent answer is that the computation is being distributed across parallel universes. Your small quantum computer is exploiting the computational power of versions of itself in countless alternative realities. Each qubit in superposition is processing information in multiple universes simultaneously. And in the end, quantum interference between all those universes produces the correct answer in this one. This is not speculative metaphysics. This is functional engineering. We are building machines that literally operate between universes. Google, IBM, startups around the world are manufacturing processors that exploit this feature of the multiverse. And the reason they work is exactly the same reason electrical wires work: quantum interference. Superposition distributed across parallel realities. Let's go back to electricity for a moment, because now you can see it in a completely different light. When Benjamin Franklin flew his kite in a storm, when Alessandro Volta stacked discs of zinc and copper, when Thomas Edison lit the first light bulb, none of them knew what they were really manipulating. They thought it was a fluid, a substance flowing through wires like water. Even today, most people think electricity is electrons moving through a wire like marbles rolling through a tube. But that is completely, radically false. The electrons in a wire barely move. They drift at the speed of a lazy snail, millimeters per hour. So how is it that when you flip the switch, the light turns on almost instantly? What travels at nearly the speed of light through that wire? It's not the electrons. It's the electromagnetic push. It's the field. It's quantum information propagating through space. The electrons are already there, filling the wire like water fills a hose. When you turn on the switch, what you do is apply electromagnetic pressure at one end, and that pressure is transmitted almost instantaneously through the entire wire, pushing all the electrons in unison. And that electromagnetic field, according to fundamental quantum mechanics, does not exist only in this universe. It exists across the entire structure of the multiverse. When an electron moves here, versions of that electron are moving in slightly different ways in parallel universes, and the sum of all those versions, the interference between all those possible histories, is what produces the behavior we observe. Here is the truly mind-blowing part. The electromagnetic force is ridiculous, absurd, unimaginably stronger than gravity. At the atomic scale, electromagnetism is approximately a billion times stronger than gravity. Yes, that number is real. It's not an exaggeration. The gravity of the entire planet Earth cannot make a paperclip fall if you stick it to a magnet the size of your thumb. A tiny piece of magnetized metal effortlessly defeats the gravitational pull of 6 sextillion tons of rock. That should tell you something about the scale of power we're talking about here. And that monstrous force is operating in every atom of your body right now, holding electrons and nuclei together, creating the illusion of solid matter. And the only thing that prevents matter from exploding due to that absurd force. Perfect, almost miraculous balance between positive and negative charges. Protons and electrons cancel each other with such exquisite precision that matter can exist stably. But if that balance were even slightly different, 1 part in 100 billion, the entire universe would be completely different, probably uninhabitable. And in the quantum multiverse, those universes exist. Universes where the balance of charges is different. Universes where fundamental constants vary by a tiny fraction. Universes where electricity works slightly differently. All coexisting, all equally real, separated only by different quantum configurations. Worlds where life may never have formed because electromagnetic forces were too strong or too weak. Now think about what this means for your daily experience. Every time you charge your phone, every time you cook on an electric stove, every time your heart beats, driven by electrical signals in your nervous system, you're not simply using a modern convenience. You are interacting directly with one of the 4 fundamental forces of the cosmos. You are manipulating the very field that holds atoms together. Your nervous system, your brain, every thought you have is basically electromagnetic computation. Sodium and potassium ions flowing across cell membranes, generating electrical potentials that travel along axons. When you think, when you feel, when you remember, you are executing electromagnetic processes in the wet flesh of your brain. And if the many worlds interpretation is correct, each of those neural processes is exploring quantum paths across multiple universes. Here is what is truly unsettling. Your consciousness, your subjective experience of existing, could be distributed across multiple versions of yourself in parallel universes. Every quantum decision in your brain, every probabilistic event at the molecular level, could be creating branches. Versions of you that made slightly different decisions because quantum events in their neurons unfolded differently. And you will never know which one you are. You can't. From your perspective, you have always been you, always followed a continuous timeline. But the mathematics suggests there are countless variations of you experiencing countless slightly different histories, all equally real, all convinced they are the only version. If you made it to the end, comment, "I made it," and I'll personally reply. And if this resonated with you, subscribe to be part of it, and leave a like if you enjoyed it.